G'day, I'm Mark Hoth and welcome to Swift Almanac. It's the end of my week, so I thought I would throw in a quick search bar so you understand how filtering and searching works within table and collection views. Here we go. Okay, so I'm running Xcode 9.1 beta and I'm going to download the collection view final code from GitHub, and the URL is on the screen. I'm going to put it on the desktop. Okay, so we've got our model, got our view controllers and our collection view controller, and essentially okay, so first thing I'm going to do is going to create some extra records. So now we've got 5 records, and what we want to do is we want to create a search bar. We're going to do that programmatically. So we just go let search bar equals UISearchBar. We're going to give it a rectangle or frame. And the frame is going to be 0, 0, UI screen dot main dot bounds dot width, and I'm going to create a file private variable called search bar height, which is an integer, and it's going to be equal to 40. So that height there is going to be search bar height, and then I'm going to add I don't know why it doesn't like dot width. Oh, it's just not an integer. Okay, that's fine. And then we're going to add the subview. Search bar. So I'll run that. Okay, so we've got a search bar. It's in the right place, but it overrides where our collection view is. So what we need to do is there is a collection view method, which is called reference size for header in section, and we need to return a CG size. And it's got a width equal to the view.bounds.width and a height equal to our search bar height, and then we run that again. And of course we need to do something here. We're making that a CG float. Do we have enough? Okay, so now we've got our search bar and we've got our cells coming underneath. We can type in here and it does nothing. We've got the display working. Now we need to work on how this search function works, and there is a UISearchBar delegate that we want to implement, and in order to make some nice code, we're going to create a new group over here, which we're going to call extensions, and we're going to create a new file, Swift file, and we're going to call it my collection view plus search. Okay, so we need the UI kit, and we create an extension of my collection view controller. We're going to add the UISearchBar delegate. And there are a couple of optional protocols we want to add here. So search bar should begin editing, search bar text did begin editing, search bar should end editing, and the search bar text did end editing. We want all of those, and we also want to know what this text did change thing is. So there's 5 functions or methods that we need to implement. Sorry, I got a bit of a cough. I'll try and edit all of those out. So here are the 5 things that we need to implement. Now, if we go back to our search controller, basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the number of cells that are displayed based on what the search criteria is. So if someone types in an A, we only want to show Audrey. If someone types in a C, we want to show Charlene and Charlie. So what we need is another array of our my data, and we'll call that filtered. So when we're filtering information, we're going to start off empty. So when we're filtering information, when we're using this search facility, then we're going to be accessing our filtered array, not our array, just to be a little bit confusing. And so what we need also is another variable called isSearching, which is a Boolean, so that to be false to start off with. And if we do start editing, then isSearching is going to be equal to true, and for these other 4, well, other 3, it's going to be equal to false. Nothing. We've basically stopped searching if these things have occurred. Now, what we want to do if the text does change, so if we are in this field and we enter an A, then we're going to get this message here from the search bar saying yes, the text has changed, and we're going to get the string. So the string is, if we type an A here, then this search string is going to be an A. So what we want to do is we want to filter all of our array.name fields so that we only display the ones that begin with A in this case. Okay. Oops. Cancel that. We don't want to delete anything. So the first thing we want to do, because is we want to set this filtered to remove everything that's in it, because we're going to recreate the filtered array every time we add or delete a text item. So that removes everything. Then we need to get the search text, which is going to be our predicate. So and we'll get something. So, maybe that's going to be fine the way it is. Sorry, our predicate is search bar dot text, which is this text value here, and we do need to force it. Then our filtered is going to equal to our array dot filtered or filter, and we want to filter on the value of name with a range of, and this string protocol is our predicate string. We'll call it predicate string so that we're not confused with NS predicates. And we also need to make sure that that is not equal to nil. So that'll give us a filtered array based on name and this string. Then we want to sort it. And then we want to set is searching equal to filtered.count equals 0, and if it is 0, let's get our brackets correct. And if there are no records, then we're not searching, otherwise we are. Once we've got our filtered array, we want to take our collection view and reload it with our fresh data. Now the problem is that if we go to our view controller over here, well, let's run it first. Okay, so it's not changing any of the cells, and the reason it's not changing any of the cells is all of our collection view data source is referring to this array. So while we have a filtered array created, we're not actually displaying it down here in our various places. So the number of items in the section is, if we're searching, we want to return filtered.count, otherwise we can return the array. And here where we've got we're setting the cell text, Audrey, Brian, Charlene, Charlie, etc., then if is searching, get rid of all these braces we don't need, then we want to use our filtered array if we're displaying a cell. So if, for instance, we type in a C, if, for instance, we type in a C, then that should return 2 cells. So our filtered count is going to be 2, and when it goes filtered 0, we're going to get the filtered index path and return Charlene. And when it returns 1, we're going to get the filtered path and take filtered Charlie, which will be the value of name for filtered 1. So that's pretty much what we need to display the information. Aha, I fell for the classic blunder, and that is that once we've created the search bar, we need to add the delegate. So you can almost always be assured that if a control is not working, it's because you haven't set the delegate. And it's still not working. So what has happened is I previously removed the textdig change label and accidentally replaced it with an A while I was trying to enter an A into the search bar. Labels are not checked by the compiler as they're allowed to be anything, but if the compiler is checking for a label, it needs to find the exact label name as specified in the protocol. So we change the A back to text did change, and everything works out as expected. And now when we enter something in, we get the fields, etc. So now that we've got a selection, we need to worry about dealing with adding and editing these records, and it becomes a little bit complex. So we've got the add details, which is what our add button does, and that's really nothing difficult, and when we do save something in an add record, we're going to add it to our array and then resort it and reload everything, and well, that's what you'd expect with add. And if we're in add mode, we do have this issue that there'll be a filter there, so we can still add here. If we add Frank and save Frank, well, we get all our lists back, but we've got this button or this text up here, so it's no longer doing the display, but it's actually putting Frank still in a sorted list, and that's what we expect. Our array is still being checked, so we can get rid of this. There's an override function, view did disappear. And the code that we want to put in view to disappear is just our search bar dot text is equal to blank. So what we're saying is that when this view goes away because we've moved to another view, then we're setting this text back to nothing, and when it's nothing, our values are going to set is searching to be false. Now this search bar thing, we get this error here. This is because when we originally created the search bar, we placed it in view did load, and we need to remove that and give it a bit more of a wider berth in the memory stakes. So we'll move it up to be a property of the collection view controller, which is where it should be. And that is also the reason why I used UIScreen.mains.bound.width up here, because the view doesn't exist when this property is being initialized. So if you're wondering why I used UIScreen.main.bounds, now this is you know, if you're doing a real application, then you're going to have to place some constraints on this, because if we were to rotate this project, it's still going to have a very tiny search bar. It's not going to expand out for the full version. So just be aware, I'm just showing you how to do things, and there's some other things that you'll need to add in for the perfect version. So add works fine. Modify is a little bit of a nightmare. And the reason it's a nightmare is because if, for instance, if, for instance, we are looking at Charlene and Charlie, then when we move over, we're getting Audrey. That's the first problem. Okay, so when I made that typo, I just deleted the brace. So when we're actually searching, what we need to do is we need to pass the cell, which is the filtered cell, and not the array cell, and we do that in where we create the the new view controller and push it. So if we are searching otherwise, we're going to do this. So we need to set the detail vc.record, which is the record that we are passing, is equal to filtered index path.row. If I spell things correctly, run that. So now we're actually sending the right one. The issue we've got there is twofold. The first issue is that we're sending the right record across, but we don't know which record we're sending back. And when we do send it back, there's an issue with resetting the array, but we'll sort that out in a second. So we need to create another variable called ModRecord, which again is going to be an integer, and we're going to set it to be -1, and -1 is going to mean that there are no modified records, because we're going to use this as our increment into our array. So obviously -1 does not exist. And so when we are clicking on this record, we want to match the filtered name against the array name so that when we come back, we know which record in the full array we're actually modifying. Because if you imagine we're matching by name, if you edit the name, then when you come back, that name does not exist anymore. If we change Charlie to Charles, when we come back, it's going to say Charles, and we're not going to be able to find Charles in our array because it still says Charlie. So before we leave, we need to keep this permanent record, which we're calling our mod record, our modified record, keeping our modified record in memory. So what we do here is we go for record in the array. And so we've got our record out of the complete array. Now we need to match that if the record.name is equal to our filtered name, which is filtered index path dot row dot name. If that's the case, we found our record, and we can just break to get out of our loop. Of course, we need to increment our modification record for each record. So the first array item is going to be 0, so we need to increment it at the start. So now that we know what our modified record is, when our view controller calls modify in response to the save, modify this record, then in modify, instead of removing at the array index path 0.row, we've got this mod record that we can remove from. So if mod record doesn't equal -1, then array dot remove at mod record, and then we will set mod record back to -1 so that it doesn't happen next time. Otherwise, we want to do that, and we can move this index path into here. Then once we've removed the record, well, we're just going to add the record and sort the array and then reload the data. So let's run that and see if that works. So if we add Edith, who's a female, save that, that looks fine. If we search for C and we'll change Charlie to Charlena, save that. And we've got Charlena and Charlie, so that's all working fine. And that's actually the removal of the search facility has ensured that we don't only have a limited number of cells here. And let's see if it, oh, we have a bug. Now we're not searching there, so what we do need to do is, once we come back from a modification, this view will disappear where we send the search bar dot text equal to 0. We should also set is searching equal to false, and I think that will correct that problem. And there you go. So that is searching. The complete copy of the code is uploaded on the under Swift Almanac on GitHub. I hope that's of use. Again, it's not hard once you've been shown how. Next week, I'm starting on core data in depth. Check it out. If you have any questions about this tutorial, then please leave a comment below or hit me up on Twitter @SwiftAlmanac. Please subscribe to the channel, it's free, and check out our website at www.swiftalmanac.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.